Hello and welcome to Talking Points here on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small, and it's another beautiful day in paradise. Let's hope we don't cause it to be ruined. Folks, it's an interesting morning. Interesting stories in the news, one of which that I want to get into just briefly, a holdover from yesterday. But of course, the big story seems to be the Brent Thomas situation. And it's being played out in multiple avenues and on multiple axes. That's going to be the main story of our next segment after this. But just initial thoughts on it before we get into the daily review.
Astounding, shocking, and reading it, and I think every individual, if they get the opportunity, should do their best to try and read the report. Or even if you get the opportunity, read the judgment laid by Justice Devendra Rampersad. It is mind-baffling.
It's the Barbados part that's mind-baffling to you?
It's not only the Barbados part. It's also the silence from certain individuals whom I would have expected to speak. Because we've heard very briefly from the Minister of Energy and Energy Industry, Stuart Young, who is the right arm and left foot of the Prime Minister. We've heard from the Minister of National Security. He held a press conference yesterday, which we will show later on. But I haven't heard from the Attorney General. And bear in mind, the Attorney General is often quick to hold a press conference, whether it be to congratulate the government or to state their intention to appeal. And I haven't heard from earlier with Christopher, who hasn't spoken about the conduct of her officers.
So the thing is, a lot of it is being hidden behind, for better or worse, rightfully or wrongfully, the whole, there's going to be an appeal and it's a matter for the courts and blah, 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 blah. All in all, really and truly, the only thing that surprises me about this is that it was able to strike such a chord. Nothing about this, to me, just based on the track record of how things have gone in a lot of different ways, is that surprising. Because when I read it, I know Barbados and, we don't have jurisdiction on Barbados, that they shouldn't be doing that. But it didn't surprise me. It did not come out and be like, oh my goodness, what are they doing here? Nothing in this, the lack of commentary, nothing is surprising to me. It has not hit me in any way to say, oh, I am surprised that it's happened. Nope, I am not surprised, because I have reached that point where the extraordinary things that should not be happening no longer seem all that special, because we've seen enough lead up to get to this point.
Well, I'm surprised you're not surprised, but I will always hold
I'm kind of surprised you're surprised.
A higher standard account. I am surprised, especially because of the involvement of the RSS and the Barbados Police Force. Am I surprised by the actions of those down here in Trinidad and Tobago? Well, to be very honest with you, as I said, I was surprised that the Commissioner of Police has not spoken about the conduct of her officers as yet. And she has not come out to defend them, she has not come out to chastise them, she hasn't spoken. But I'm also surprised at the Attorney General not holding a press conference.
All I will say is that regardless of how political this issue is or not, politics, both national and internal for various institutions, are probably being played out in front of our very eyes or behind closed doors. But more on that later. Let's get into, folks, the daily review. And the first story, it's a holdover from yesterday, apologies, but I thought it was something that deserved attention. The Prime Minister seems to be floating the idea of removing the 4 existing service commissions and replacing it with a tribunal. He laments that the service commissions have problems, they take too long generally, and he has basically claimed that, okay, people want public service reform. He's saying he is reported to have said, let's just fix it within the confines of what already exists, replace them with a tribunal, and it should solve the problems. I'm not entirely sure if he fully explained to the satisfaction of all how a single tribunal will solve the problems. He did, I think, say also that, at least in some cases, the service commissions are not full-time, so part of it is to actually get them to be available to do all of the work that might be necessary. The education system is no small entity anymore. So the Teaching Service Commission was, I believe, one he singled out in that specific case. But what do you make about this? Because I don't have an issue with the idea, except I would like to hear more. Otherwise, who's to say that this is just not going to change the problem into something different?
Well, we will give the Prime Minister the time that is required to expand on it, because he has hinted at bringing legislation to Parliament for it to be debated. So we will accept that as is. He's just hinted at it. Whether or not he actually brings legislation is a completely different conversation, because we could probably be repeating this topic, who knows, in a month's time or in a year's time.
Or multiple times within the next year.
But the thing for me is, how is replacing service commissions with a single tribunal going to actually resolve the issue? Because not only have you referred to service commissions as so-called independent, I mean, by your actions as Prime Minister, you've also skewed the independence of the Police Service Commission.
More on that later.
But furthermore, I also believe that it's not just any one government, it's governments past and present. Let's be honest with you. I mean, could you name one commission that has been independent? Who appoints the commissioners? You know, that's the other part. Furthermore, he says things will never change, they will never improve as long as basic management tenets are not being met. Those management tenets, again, were skewed when you're dipping your hand into absolutely everything. And managers are probably, one, not necessarily qualified, whether it be in terms of actual academic qualifications or with experience, but they're getting the positions.
Or rather, proving that they're suitable for management.
Furthermore, if you also have managers not being able to do their job that is required of them for whatever reason, inclusive of political interference, then that is not going to change. So who is going to be responsible for actually bringing this tribunal together? Who's going to be responsible for appointing the tribunal? Well, put it this way, the president would most likely have that power and authority.
The president who comes from a political party.
But
currently,
she's also going to do it based off of the advice of the Prime Minister.
Of course.
You know, so honestly speaking, creating a single tribunal in order to deal with all matters within the public service, whilst trying to remove the Police Service Commission, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, the Teaching Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, all of those things, you have to try and clean up. You have to try and clean up the mess. You have to try and clean up all the cobweb. But I can't see how this, at least based on what has been said thus far, is actually going to bear fruit.
The problem is, it's implied in the statements. I don't think he says this directly, but the various entities will probably have authority over human resource management, and the tribunal is just to be the check and balance on, say, if WASA was firing people or whatever, right? Whoever the employer is. The thing is, we know that for all intents and purposes, all of these state entities, public entities, etc., ministries, what have you, they are not independent. They are, to some extent, loaded with political appointees, or nepotism has, you know, fattened the ranks. A lot of people are just there to eat a food from favors. And to what extent now, where will you source your tribunal? Will the tribunal actually be able to be independent, or will it just be one way for the left arm to cover up what the right arm is doing as opposed to not knowing? But the flip side is this. If we wanted something independent for employees to seek redress from their employer, don't we already have a court that seems to be independent enough? I mean, the justices of the land, for the most part, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that we have some judges who are independent.
Well, that's kind of...
And will that be the source of the tribunal?
That is kind of what any government is trying to avoid. And that is the whole point of a commission. I mean, a commission is there to oversee the appointment, the promotion, or even the discipline of you know, state entities for services of human resources. But in terms of what you've just mentioned there, that's exactly what any government is trying to avoid. I can't see...
What's the difference between a tribunal and a court?
But this is the thing, a tribunal doesn't have judicial power, put it that way. So I think the tribunal will try and deal with these things without it having to get to that stage of having to go to a court.
All right.
That's the whole point of it. But I also believe that, quite frankly, on the face of it, it's not much difference. It's not going to work out the independence or the political influence or interference.
The one thing that I see as having a tribunal as the fix, as opposed to the service commissions, is the service commissions actually are the ones to appoint. So you hear, well, the police service commission appoints X, the teaching service commission has to hire for Y, public service commission, and so on and so on. And I do think, to some extent, part of the issues, when we have people who are managers who are not in charge, to some extent, of the HR, they don't have any say. When you take certain aspects of management function out of an organization altogether, why are you surprised when they then have issues and inefficiencies and inadequacies and to some extent ineptitude and with regards to management systems, right? So to what extent now is the Public Service Commission properly able to plan out HR for all of these entities? But let's move on now because we're running out of time. I don't know if this is good news. I don't know if this is a red herring. Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzalez, he is optimistic that within the next 3 to 5 months, 70% of the country will have 24/7 supply of water. In 3 to 5 months, he's optimistic. I hope for the best. I expect nothing, not one thing, because I don't know what is the point with the timing of such a long promise right now, especially given the fact that the Met Office just said and WASA put us on a water restriction more or less at the start of this month or late last month. You're now telling us this now, really? So we're just going to solve it just like that? I did hear in my house that they're looking to put dig a well on the grounds of the president's house, and some people in the area are against it. I don't know. If we could find enough water to give 24/7 supply to most of the country, I ain't necessarily saying about the rest of the country, I'm all for it.
Honestly speaking, why don't we just move on? Because how often are we here? Oh, we promised a 24/7 supply to how many
optimistic.
percent? Yeah, he's okay.
It's not even a promise.
Thank you for correcting me. He's
it's
optimistic.
Not even a promise.
But you see, the attitude is right in the sense that now is a dry season. As much as you can get done in terms of WASA's infrastructures is absolutely crucial for when the rainy season comes, especially as it relates to water trapment and runoff supplies of water. I mean, one of the biggest issues that we had last week was turbidity at various booster stations.
Yeah.
And that affected various areas who are used to a regular supply of water and not being able to get water. 70% of the country receiving a steady water supply within the next 5 to 7 months. Optimistic about
3
that.
3 to 5 months.
I am okay. I'll wait to see. I'll just. I'll be patient.
Just
I'm not entirely optimistic. I can tell you.
Didn't four administrations ago promise water for all? We're not talking people partner. We're talking UNC way back in the 90s.
I remember when Mustafa Abdul Hamid was campaigning. I think back in 2009. That he says we're promising 100% water supply for all in so many years.
But then Badzio Pandey's administration also promised water for all?
Yes, it's always one of the goals. It's always one of the goals and one of the aims and one of the promises.
So my thing is, how is it so simple to solve unless he's been hiding stuff from us?
It's not simple to solve because it's 70% of the country. And by the way, 70% of the country, there's so many things that go with that one statistics.
Yep.
Precisely what are the areas that include 70% of the country? Are those low-lying areas or those high-lying areas? What does it also mean in terms of infrastructure and development?
Are those highly populated areas
highly
or low-populated areas?
So 70% could mean anything, you know?
It leaves out about a third.
So if that is the case, that's a 24/7 supply. That's another aspect of it. Is 70% of the population currently even receiving a 3-day supply of water, 2-day supply? So all of those things you have to examine, And quite frankly, I'll just wait to see what the next 5 months holds when the rains come.
The cynic in me will say they'll solve that problem, but then the amount of leaks they'll have to deal with, I very much doubt they'll be prepared for that. That's just an assumption on my part, folks. Just to mention the last story, there's still things happening. There's still reports being sent into the Commission of Inquiry over the Paria tragedy. I can't get over this fact that a report from the Institute of Surveyors recommending that Paria map its pipelines in the Gulf of Paria, that's apparently now been sent. Paria has more or less condemned the recommendation, saying they haven't had a chance to respond to it. LMCS agrees with it. That's not my issue. My issue is, why is this still taking so long, and when, if ever, will we see the report? I only included this, Keaton, this morning just to bring up the fact that the situation with Paria has not been resolved, and I don't know how close it is to resolve. And this is not that big of an important event, except just to highlight it's still not over.
Well, I think the recommendation is having to actually map the pipelines that are part of Paria's infrastructure, because what is being suggested is that the pipe in which the men tragically lost their lives were built 50 to 70 years ago. So the topography has changed quite a bit over that time. It is very important, but yes, why is it still going on? Why have we reached a stage with nothing more to speak about? But
a year and a half now is where we reached, right?
And there's no sense of closure for anybody involved. But I think the other issue that has been raised since this tragedy has occurred, and now with this being added to the report, or one of the recommendations being added to the report, is precisely what are the industry standards that are being practiced in terms of best quality, in terms of health and safety. In other words, is Paria just a fly-by-night company, or are they really somebody who in the industry who's actually up to par?
Listen, all I know for certain is that the board did not know how to deal with a crisis and had to call in a relief pitcher in the form of the Minister of Energy. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll get further into the Brent Thomas international scandal, that is the abduction of one man from Barbados to face the...
Don't sound so sarcastic. Don't downplay it. It's important.
It is important.
It is important.
It's just that it's reached the point, folks, where it's almost ludicrous that this was allowed to happen. And I can't help but laugh. Again, I am not surprised that it's possible that it happened. Folks, we'll get into it when we come back.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
7 is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
It is estimated that 1 in 5 children have untreated cavities, which sometimes can be more than just a dental issue.
So the thinking a lot of parents have is that first set of teeth that the kids have, they're going to lose it anyway.
Actually, that is the attitude, but what parents need to realize is that we have those baby teeth from age 6 to age 12, and they serve a purpose.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And the Minister of National Security, he did a pretty or relatively short press conference where I believe he took no questions, but he made a statement, somewhat rambling, basically trying to defend the government's position in this whole Brent Thomas situation, although it's interesting what he did not say, or rather the aspects of the case which has caught the public's attention that he did not address. For more, it's time to cue this.
As I have been making clear before this nation, time and time again within recent times, I know what my responsibilities are, and I carry them out to the best of our ability with the full support of the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago in this regard, in terms of providing resources and the other things that a minister has responsibility for. But recently, there was this matter with Mr. Brent Thomas as the first claimant, a matter on which the court pronounced. Lawyers for the state, who I might tell you have been directed by the police to conduct an appeal in that matter, and that is a matter for the lawyers and for the police. Mr. Thomas, as is within his right, issued through his attorneys challenges to what the police have done, seeking relief from the court in constitutional issues and otherwise. From the little information available to me, the police would have obtained warrants, and they would have gone to the home and offices of the claimant. They would have found things that, according to the police, that were prohibited items, namely automatic firearms and hand grenades, so-called. And on the basis of those, the police took the action that it took. It had nothing to do with me as minister, the Prime Minister, or the Cabinet. The court pronounced upon those claims by the claimant, and it made certain orders, including the fact that these items should be returned to the claimant, and that, of course, will be one of the bases of the appeal, as I have been told by the police, because if they are prohibited items, they ought not ordinarily to be in the hands of anyone, including firearm dealers that are licensed under Chapter 1601 of the police, of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, the Firearms Act. And to import explosives, which grenades are, you have to be licensed under 1602, which is the Explosives Act. The police, acting in accordance with an observation of both those laws, found on its own independent professional assessment that they could lay charges, and they did that. I have already long observed that right now we are in a fight for the soul of Trinidad and Tobago. And I do not say that lightly. I say that because I see every one of our state institutions under severe attack. Attacked by criminals who lobby and who influence people who hold high office in this country. And the criminals have friends everywhere in this country. They have them in the police service. They have them in the customs, in the immigration, in the defense force. They have them in the judiciary. They have them in the parliament. There are others who feel they have to benefit from this Brent Thomas thing. I've seen calls for all kinds of things in the newspapers. With the little facts available to me, members of the public, I know why you are hearing very loud voices. There are those who feel that they could capitalize on the judge's comments to their own advantage and benefit. That is all right. And I urge the police to continue doing its work in accordance with the mandate in front of it.
Let's just sum it up here. I'll just say this, Keaton. Minister of National Security, he gave some details on the basics of the case with regards to the offenses. And what he said about that part of it, I'm willing to believe that there's no grand conspiracy to go after the gun dealer, who does work for the government, by the way. He doesn't this is not some illegal arms dealer. This is somebody who apparently is a supplier to the government. But fine, okay. You know what? All the minister said was, it was a police matter, let the police order. I get that. But ultimately speaking, if his hope and his intention was to defend his and government's position or innocence with this press conference, it would have been better if he said nothing. Because not only does it seem as though he fails to understand, and he pointed this out. We heard it just now. You exclaimed, right? Criminals have friends all over the place, in customs, in the police, in parliament. He just said it. That is the environment that causes the public to not trust the system, to borrow a phrase, to be quick.
Who are Fitzgerald Hines' friends?
Right? Hold on.
Sorry.
So not only that, but he spoke about the Brent Thomas case. He didn't speak about the most important part, which you brought up earlier. The fact that how was he taken into custody on foreign soil? And it seems as though that there isn't the correct paperwork for it. And it seems as though everybody wants to hide behind, well, it's an ongoing investigation, it's before the courts, we can't talk about it. But in a land where you yourself could admit that criminals have friends in all of the high places and all of the right places, or the wrong places, depending on how you see it, why are we going to just take it for the benefit of the doubt? Oh, it's before the courts, therefore we can't know anything. So we'll just trust and give you the benefit of the doubt and have faith in a system that saw police officers shoot their own fellow police officer and then lie to the commissioner about it. I'm going to have faith in the system. Keaton, floor is yours.
Why do we keep highlighting this man?
Because he's the Minister of National Security.
Such a shame. Anyway, greatest respect to the Minister of National Security. You understand. He should not have been the one holding the press conference in the first place. In fact, no member of parliament should have been holding the press conference. Or let me rephrase that.
I actually...
The only individual should have been the Attorney General, one, or the Commissioner of Police.
Yeah. The Attorney General is technically a member of Parliament, so, okay,
right?
you correct yourself there.
So those are the only two individuals as far as I'm concerned.
In fact, they would have been, to your point, the Commissioner saying that this is not affected by Parliament would be stronger than a member of Parliament.
Precisely.
Government saying that
this is nothing, right? And that's my point. Fitzgerald Hines, even if you wanted somebody from government, is not the best person to defend the government, right? Because up to now, he hasn't really spoken about the case. He's spoken about so many other things. It should have been the Commissioner of Police or the Attorney General. Furthermore, he made some serious allegations there about friends everywhere in the police service, in immigration, in the judiciary, in Parliament. If you have that information, I hope that you forward that information to the police. Let them do the investigations, which might take years. And hopefully these individuals will be charged. Because if you're withholding that information, you're not helping the soul of Trinidad and Tobago. Thirdly, I still have a lot of questions over this case. On what grounds, on what authority? In other words, on whose guidance, whose advice, or whose direction were the three police officers, let me get the name, ASP Birch, Senior Superintendent Suzette Martin, and Corporal Joe Field, were actually allowed to fly in an RSS plane to Barbados to bring this individual, Brent Thomas, back to Trinidad on whose authority, right? Who contacted the Barbados Police Service?
That's the more important question.
And
to me.
on what grounds or on what authority was the Barbados Police Service actually acting? Furthermore, it seems as though, because nobody has given clarification to this, that the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs were also not notified because there is the CARICOM, there's the extradition treaty. There's that extradition treaty which we seem to have bypassed, right? I think it's the CARICOM and Territories Extradition Treaty, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody correct me later on, right? Those were bypassed. Then also, there are certain agencies and authorities, again, I keep questioning, we need more information. I'm speaking based on what I know. That seems to not have been informed. Was the Commissioner of Police informed? Why hasn't she spoken about the conduct of her officers as yet? Was the Ministry of CARICOM and Foreign Affairs informed? That doesn't seem to be the case, because from what I understand, we've not spoken about the extradition treaty at all. Was the Attorney General informed? None of these things have come to light. And then we have the Minister of National Security addressing the public, when he himself is saying it's a police matter. The Commissioner of Police should be the one to respond to the information being displayed in the public, or the Attorney General.
Unfortunately, the Minister of National Security seems to not understand what police matters means. Once you leave your border, it is no longer a police matter. There is no such thing as a police force in the world that has jurisdiction in another country's sovereign territory. The end. Otherwise, the Americans would have sent somebody to pick up Jack Warner, years ago. But he's fighting extradition, as you pointed out. So that and all actually makes okay, maybe there's a long technical explanation, but we have to get that. Minister didn't give us that, and without any sort of reasonable explanation, what the minister just said, based off of basic principles of international treaty and international law and national sovereignty, this is not a police matter. Therefore, your confidence in your knowledge of these things, I have to now question it.
Well, actually, you have to understand, and a quick correction, it's the Commonwealth and Foreign Territories Act. I got the correct name there. If I am not mistaken, and I'm due to be corrected, doesn't the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have an Interpol department? Right?
I think that was pointed out.
If that is the case as well, all of these questions.
No, but even Interpol is not so much of a police agency. Interpol doesn't have jurisdiction to go in any country or whatever and just act. It's not a police force per se.
That's why I'm asking, on what grounds or on whose authority or advice did the Barbados Royal Police Force act?
Did they act?
Right? And who are these? Well, they obviously would have had to, exactly based on what you're saying.
I'm assuming that they did, otherwise it's an international incident.
And these three police officers, on whose authority did they act? Where did they receive their instructions from? They're not going to come out and speak. We know that. But on whose authority are they acting?
But the sad part is, this is too big of a situation. They cannot hide behind they were under orders, unless they're willing to say who gave them those orders. And it can't just be, well, I heard from so-and-so that so-and-so told so-and-so to tell me to go. My supervisor can just tell me, well, somebody from on high told me to tell you all to go and pick him up. It can't be so.
Can we be honest? I don't think they really have to come out and defend themselves publicly. Again, it's up to the Commissioner of Police. If she could respond to claims against her in relation to Tea Party, right? She could clarify all these questions that we have as well.
It's just the only reason why I'm not going full tilt on blowing up is the fact that I've yet to see Barbados issue any statement condemning the situation, so I'm assuming that an international incident did not occur. But this is it was an extradition from a foreign territory. And if the court is basically saying, well, it wasn't conducted in the correct manner, one could forgive the rest of us for having a lot of questions still.
Is it even legally correct to say that it was an extradition?
Well, that's a good point. It might not even have been a legal extradition. It might have been an abduction. It
might have been an extraction. Anyway, let's take a break here on Talking Points. When we return, we'll get into some other issues actually plaguing the island of Tobago. It was highlighted a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be re-examining that topic this morning. Stay tuned.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
artists you'll meet. The sounds will astonish you. Superb voices, new artists, simply refreshing. Celebrate amazing. May 27th, North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds Blanchisseuse. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny's Sport, Extra Foods, Mart's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, Athletes by the Park, and WESN, 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and thank you for staying with us. We should be joined by our guest very shortly via Zoom. But as previously mentioned before we took the break, we were speaking about a situation that was highlighted recently about the plight of fire services here in TNT, but specifically what is happening in Tobago.
Yes.
I think one of the more unfortunate stories that I've heard is that there have been some firemen who've actually had to pay out of their own pocket monies to repair, is it the Scarborough fire station? And up until this point, they haven't been remunerated.
Well, part of the story, because it's more than just the issue of one fire station.
No, of course,
but
yes.
part of it is the irony that part of the Scarborough fire station was destroyed by fire. So, that's some light humor just to add, but the reality is it's causing a deficiency with the amount of facilities. Also, there's the fact that some of the fire stations on the island, we know Roxborough seems to be brand new and it looks beautiful and everything, right, that Roxborough fire station, but it seems like the fire stations more on the western end might be old, out of date, dilapidated,
I think Roxborough is having its issues as well.
Of course. Now, we are joined by the president of the Fire Service Association, Leo Ramkisoon. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. That's a sound check. You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear here. So we started off introducing the topic to the folks while we were trying to get you into the Zoom meeting. With regards to the Tobago issues, are we right to say that, well, there are not only issues with the Scarborough fire station, which was partially destroyed, but also issues of just obsolescence and space being too small and too old and dilapidated? Some of these fire stations have been in use for, well, probably since before I was born, as far as I can remember, and they are in desperate need of either some sort of renovation, repair or replacement.
Yes, you're quite accurate in your description. The issues that are affecting the station, and if I could start probably on the Crown Point end of the island, that fire station, as you would have rightfully described the conditions, to be well outdated. It's a very old station. It was due for reconstruction within the last 15 years. That was supposed to have been done, and that has not been effected. So the officers continue to dwell in that or to occupy that station under conditions which are, rendering them in unsafe and unhealthy conditions. That is because they are exposed on a continuous basis to carbon monoxide and other toxic gases that emit from the trucks when they are in use and being tested. They are exposed directly to the runway of the airport. They are, bombarded with the elements, dust and sea blast and everything. So that station was to be expanded so that it could house the engineering department and to house the personnel themselves. Scarborough Station, as you rightfully pointed out earlier, was affected by a fire. They did do some renovation work to the Scarborough Station itself. It is not complete, so the officers are still being housed in the Canby facility. And the Roxborough Station, last but not least, that station was shut down in about 2013. The USH agency having shut it down, and then it was rebuilt. And after being rebuilt, now we have examined that station during last week. And what we have unearthed is some structural issues that are to be addressed. I note that the divisional fire officer in charge of the Tobago division would have issued a public statement yesterday indicating that UDCOT, who would have undertaken to build the station, are responsible for addressing those structural issues that are affecting the stations. And we have not yet started to talk about appliances and equipment. So yes, the structures and the conditions of the stations themselves are not in a very good place at all.
Mr. Ramaki, since these issues were raised, now I know that since at least last year, I recall that you were raising these issues. You raised them again most recently. We heard that's how money is being spent to try and actually facilitate the procurement of equipment. But beyond that, has anything else been said or suggested to try and solve these issues that fire officers are facing?
Well, I mean, comrade, you may be aware we visited the Tobago division, much like we visit stations all over Trinidad and Tobago, and we spent a few days in Tobago examining the conditions, especially in respect of Scarborough Fire Station in particular. Now, the issues that affect Scarborough Station appliances are not exclusive in terms of how it affects appliances across Trinidad and Tobago. However, the officers there are not manning the fire trucks because of the deplorable and unsafe and unroadworthy condition of those appliances. And we would have highlighted those findings publicly. What came out of that is that yesterday, the trucks were called in by the Ministry of Transport to be inspected. And what we are to understand is that none of the fire trucks, at least 3 fire trucks and 1 or 2 ambulances were tested by the transport department, and they were failed. They did not meet the compliance of the Road Traffic Act to be roadworthy. Only the ambulance passed. What that means is that the officers are fully vindicated in their position that the trucks are posing more of a threat to the public and to themselves than if they were being used at times. So,
Mr. Ramaki, sorry, if we were to just be more specific then, should there be an emergency on the island of Tobago? Because I'm not speaking specifically of Trinidad this morning, but if there was a major fire incident on the island of Tobago, could the authorities respond to deal with the issue? Are there resources to actually deal with any major fire incidents on the island?
Comrade, I don't know how to answer that with any real level of commitment towards resources. I think the administration of the fire service needs to address that question. Hence the reason why I am speaking publicly about this. I am trying my best, as instructed by my members, to ensure that the public and everyone is made fully aware beforehand that they did everything in their power as fire officers to resolve this problem. What they are being asked to do is to operate trucks unlawfully on the roadway at their own, compromising their own selves in terms of the law, as well as safety precautions for using of vehicles on the road. And that is why I did make the call to the chief fire officer to apologize to officers when he sought to lay blame on them. And I'm saying that because he made the statement that officers are bouncing trucks and officers are negligent in terms of how they operate in trucks, and that is why there are so many defects. Well, when I check why the trucks were failed yesterday from the transport, they were failed for things like missing nuts, studs, wiper blades, the suspension on the trucks are faulty, missing mud guards, cracked windscreens, you name it. And all of these issues had nothing to do with negligence or mishandling. It had everything to do with poor maintenance and lack of parts and other supplies to repair trucks. So I make the call again for an apology to be issued to fire officers across Trinidad and Tobago, because by and large, all of the trucks that are off the run by and large, 90% of them are off the run because of maintenance problems.
Well, Mr. Ramkisoon, this, of course, we've just had a couple of high-profile incidents where, in one case, I believe it is the earlier case, a mother and a daughter were killed, and then in the more recent case, residents complained not only did the fire service they weren't able to find the hydrant, they didn't have basic equipment, the first truck took some time, the follow-up truck took even longer. Now, we've seen tragedy to some extent in Trinidad. We're questioning about Tobago. Are there any questions with regards to the amount of resources being allocated to the fire service on a regular basis? Because it seems as though this sounds to me like what I hear about other areas about public service. Not enough resources being allocated, particularly to maintenance. So, you kind of take it for granted that you could manage, but then eventually the wheels start to fall out, rhetorically speaking, and in this case, possibly soon to be literally. And all we need now is some very, very easily preventable tragedy. And then will we say we need to fix it as opposed to taking it before well, we've already had one. How many more are we going to have? But is it that resources is a problem just in the long term, widespread across the nation?
Yes, it is that age-old God is a Trini attitude towards business. We are a reactive state, and that is reflected in how we manage our resources. The trouble with us is that the fire service do not respond to ordinary day-to-day requirements of the public. We respond to emergencies when life and limb as well as property is threatened, and therefore there needs to be a commensurate approach to ensuring that your fire service is up and running. But we tend to wait until things happen, and I cannot send out enough condolences on behalf of my membership to the mother and daughter who would have perished, and others who would have, lost loved ones and property. We are deeply saddened by these circumstances. But I want you to understand something, comrade. In the same way that officers, when they don't have a truck to respond to the public, the assumption is that, well, the officers, we tend to look at how it affects the public and the community and so on. But I want to also point out that it affects the officers themselves very deeply in a psychological way, because they are frustrated not being able to attend to emergencies within their own communities. Sometimes when it happens within their communities, friends, loved ones, burgesses, members of the public are calling on them, and they can't do anything, and they have to wait for a truck to come from some other district and have to respond. And they are frustrated. It's bearing down on them in a psychological way, because they want to do work. They are trained, they are ready, they're keeping themselves in a state of readiness, but without the requisite equipment and appliances, they are stymied and are hamstrung. So I'm again calling on behalf of the membership that where the chief fire officer and the ministry may not be able to speed up the procurement process to repair the trucks or so on, I think that at the level of the prime minister or higher, we need to ensure that we get even international assistance where it needs be. We could probably talk to Candace Bond, Her Excellency, and see if we could get some assistance from the United States in terms of resolving this problem.
Mr. Ramkisoon, we don't have much time again, but very quickly, it's a question more for clarification than anything else. Who is responsible for maintaining these trucks?
Well, ultimately, the chief fire officer is responsible. He would have officers under his command, which would be the brigade engineer, and they generally would be the officers responsible for maintenance of the trucks.
All right, thank you for that, sir. Unfortunately, we are out of time, though, but thank you for your time this morning and for just updating us on that issue, especially what's taking place on the island of Tobago. But keep us, and we hope that this issue is resolved in less than a year. In less than a few months, but we hope only goes so far.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to continued communication with you to keep the public updated. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ramkisoon. Take care. President of the Fire Services Association, Leo Ramkisoon. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on Talking Points for News on the Hour. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines this morning.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Man killed outside Canopia School. Public Utilities Minister assures improved water supply in coming months. Regionally, Barbadians being told to brace for crop shortages. And internationally, 7 bodies found in U.S. search for missing teens. Now for the details. A shooting outside a Monroe Road Canopia School left 1 man dead and another injured. The incident occurred early Monday morning during classes. School was dismissed due to the incident. The victim was identified as 41-year-old Ronnie Pear. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez has assured that there will be an improved supply of water within the next few months. Areas such as Freeport continue to experience severe water woes at this time.
So what we decided to do is to identify some rich aquifers in this area to improve water supply, because it is too dependent on the Desalcott plant and the Caroni water treatment plant. As we speak right now, Desalcott is now producing water, 30 million gallons of water per day, meaning that it is underproducing from its contracted amount of 40 million gallons of water per day.
In regional news now, Barbadians are being told to brace for the possibility of shortages in some crops as the agricultural drought affecting the island persists. At the same time, Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Indar Aware said government was building resilience for some time for the eventuality of prolonged dry spells, and this plan had now been kicked into high gear. However, the minister said that much would come down to management by the individual farmer. In international news now, 7 dead bodies have been found on a property in a small town in rural Oklahoma during a search for 2 missing teenagers, authorities say. Police said they believe the teenagers they were looking for, Ivy Webster, 14, and 16-year-old Brittany Brewer, were among the dead. The corpse of Jesse McFadden, a felon and registered sex offender who police said the girls were traveling with, was also found. Police did not list the cause of death. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny Sport, Extra Foods, Mart's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, Athletes by the Park, and WESN 38 Gattaca.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying with us. We're smiling because Sean just brightened up my day a
I
little bit.
brightened up Keaton's day so well. You know, I'm just optimism and sunshine.
I'm smiling through the bloody pessimism.
Anyway, time to open the phone lines.
I think it's time to open up the phone lines.
If you want to talk about whatever it is that we discussed on the show today, or if there's some topic that you would like to bring up, because it seems as though there are quite a few things that happened over the weekend leading into today. So if anything you want to bring up, feel free to call in. Please mute your television. Please remember to be respectful when on TV, especially to other callers. And remember that other callers will be calling behind you, so make your point as quickly as possible. We are our first caller on the line from Petit Valley. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
I had other things to
Hold on
contribute.
one second. Can we just close the talk back, please? Right.
Hello?
My apologies, caller. Go ahead.
Okay. I had other things to contribute this morning, but I will have to leave it on the back burner because of what I saw this morning. Sadly, I have to address it. The pundit, I want to get his name wrong, Mr. Maraj, I think. He's making the wrongs on all the stations, and then I turned on my TV this morning, I saw him on a particular station. And he needs to stop. He really needs to stop. He went so far this morning of invoking Anja Barrett, named the young East Indian woman who has died. I could remember right after she died, I think a week after, a young 16-year-old African girl that died up Santa Cruz, same way adoption, and was raped and killed. A young African girl. And he really needs to stop. He's not doing the country no good. Because I could say the statement he made by people on the East-West corridor is breaking in Indian homes and doing it. Let me tell you something, Sean and Keaton. These criminals don't care what house. They don't watch the house and say, there's an Indian living there, you know. I go breaking the Indian house. They're breaking in African house. They're breaking in anybody's house. I think he needs to change the conversation and come. This race thing, saying he needs to stop. And invoking a young Miss Barrett name this morning, I saw wasn't good. Have a nice day. I wanted to talk other things, but I need to say that.
No, I understand. We'll come back to your topic, but we have another caller that's been waiting from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Shah and Mr. Small.
Morning.
Quickly, I want to talk about the TTPS. And a judge made a judgment on the PSB and the officers, and I'm not seeing the TTPS addressing that issue, whereby he said what they did was wrong and illegal. And that is the head of the PSB, the senior superintendent lady. So the PCA has gotten involved into it now. And I'm hoping that Mr. West finally, basically, he had some utterances a couple of months ago where he said the TTPS was the biggest gang. Now he have all the tools available to him to show that what he's saying is actually so, or he has to shut up. The other thing I want him to find out during that investigation, if there is an elite group of policemen, a unit that is engaging in kidnapping, and if there is a subunit within that elite group called the imitation police, because you know we have a lot of imitation police activity that is involved in crime. So that is why the police service basically have to answer and has to cleanse itself from inside, and they're not doing anything. The judge and the jury is the final arbitration of what is true and what is correct. You can't go outside the Privy Council, the appeal court, or the judiciary. If they make a pronouncement, you have to take action right away, else we go nowhere. And quickly on this racist statement by the pundit, I don't believe it's a racist statement because I've seen the president of the Criminal Bar Association has said in the Express on page 3, Indos are being attacked and the invaders are Afros. He said that as
Have a good day,
president
caller.
of the Criminal Bar Association, Israel Khan.
All right.
So there is.
Thank you very much. You know why I cut your call? And forgive me, it's not me being disrespectful because everybody's allowed to present their opinion. But it was purely out of frustration because somebody else says it does not actually deflect from what an individual originally suggested. If you want to break it down and analyze it and say it was not a racial comment, you're free to do so. Right? I had the opportunity to interview the gentleman last week. He gave some level of clarification to what he would have suggested and how the media was a bit unfair to him. But at the same time, I am not in agreement with his words. The Criminal Bar Association President Israel Khan has suggested that the empirical evidence based off of data that is available to them suggests that East Indians, their homes are the ones that are actually being invaded, while the majority of the perpetrators are young Afro-Trinidadians. But again, given the level of clarification that Israel Khan made in his statements, you cannot correlate both. Okay, caller from Diggle Martin, and that ties back into what the caller from Pity Valley said. I'm not saying that he should stop making his media rounds. If you have a conversation with him, let him express himself. But at the same time, those who are conducting those interviews need to know how to control an interview. And maybe in instances that criticism is relevant for me and Sean as well, but you need to know how to conduct and direct the interview. Don't just let him go off on a free speech. You know, allow the man to say what he has to say. But you see, when people go off on tangents, I understand the frustrations being expressed by the public.
Well, I have something to say about that with regards to not accepting that it's not racial. But we have a caller, I believe.
Good morning, caller from Tunapuna.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Pleased to be in your program this morning. Apparently, the focus now is on the pundit, and everybody's forgetting about the rapists, the murderers, and the bandits. I totally agree with Mr. Israel Khan, and Mr. Israel Khan is not just Israel Khan. He's the head of the Criminal and Bar Association. He's not just Israel Khan. So we have to understand that I am not in support really of any one side and everything. I am saying that the focus now is on the pundits and not the real issue. The real issue in this country is the crime. Let me tell you all something, gentlemen. At this point in time, crime has overtaken this country. Remember, we passed the murder rate at this point in time with the same time last year, which was 600. And people are now focusing on a pundit who make a statement that is the reality. The reality is they're criticizing the pundit for what he says of what is being practiced in this country. What is being practiced in this country, you cannot talk about it. They go brand new racist. That's the point. That's my point. So we have to put we act together and we act straight.
All right.
Talking about something.
All right, caller. It's just you are getting a bit rambly there. I understand where you're coming from because I have in the past, on a personal setting, made statements about issues similar to this that could easily be interpreted as being racist. The issue, however, is at the end of the day, the only unique contribution the pundit had to the conversation about crime is to bring up the race differences between who he perceived to be the entirety of the victims and who he perceived to be the entirety of the criminals. So the pundit is the one that technically made it about race. That was, as far as I'm aware, the major contribution that he provided to the discussion. So just, you know, on the outside looking in, what else are people to think? That's point number one.
Very quickly, Sean, we have a call on the line with us from Diggle Martin.
Okay, let's take the call from Diggle Martin.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, gentlemen.
Oh, from Shogunas. Good morning.
Good morning, caller from Shogunas.
Yes, but I agree with the sentiment of the last caller. We know what is the solution to the crime problem is enforcing our laws. And instead of doing that, we end up talking and finding out anything about who racial and who whatnot and whatnot. Right? And secondly, we talk about the maintenance of government vehicles. In the old days, most of the vehicles was maintained by the works department. Of course, there would be larger ones like fire brigade who would have their own places. And these have been destroyed. They've called something Vemcot. I don't know what happened to it, but it looks like no government vehicles go there to be fixed. And unless government realize what their role is and what is the purpose of special purpose companies, I do not feel that it's off. When you put something like Netco and Udicot, what are their purpose? Right? Everything they do in work department used to do it, and they don't do it, you know. They give out contract.
Mm-hmm.
The work department was better able to give out the contract because they was the one monitoring the contract and whatnot. These people monitor nothing if you look and see the standard of work that is being done. Thank you, gentlemen. Or any questions before I hang up?
No, none. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Professor. For the most part, we agree with what you said, and you brought up more questions to ask about the Prime Minister's intentions with his proposed solution, but that, we'll save that for another time. We have a caller from San Juan.
Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, a very good morning to Keaton.
Good morning.
And a very good morning to Sean Michael.
Morning.
Now, focusing just on one issue concerning the pundit, Satyana Maharaj. I hope I get his
Satyana
first
Maharaj,
name properly.
yes.
Yeah, from Arangwes. Now, remember, in all fairness to the pundit, remember the pundit, he was born and raised and lives in Arangwes. He was just confining what the goings on in his community of Arangwes. The pundit never spoke about Labre or Point Fortin or Arima or Tobago. The pundit lives in Arangwes. By being a pundit, he would interact with members of his community. And when the home invasions take place, the people whose homes have been invaded, they would describe the perpetrators of the crime to the pundit. In all fairness to him, the pundit, he lives in Arangwes. He's speaking about his community, the community of Arangwes. And in all fairness again to the pundit, he never said Afro-Trinidadians, you know. He described them as miscreants coming from the east-west corridor. And whoever garden it falls in. Because remember, there's a perception too. There's a perception going back since Eric Williams' days that East Indian people have a lot of money. And you could go and attack them. Because there was a time when the Chinese supermarket owners say they were under attack. Nobody had a problem when the Chinese grocery owners said that the Chinese grocery owners were being attacked. But from the minute the East Indians speak about it, everybody has an issue about it. So you have to take it in context what the pundit is saying. He's speaking about his community
all right, caller.
of Arangwes.
We'll respond to you.
Listen to their comments of
Thank you. We have to take this for the call, but I will ask you, caller, was the pundit speaking about his community as a whole? Was he speaking about his community, or was he speaking about the community of Arangwes as a whole? Think about that for a moment. Call on the line with us from Cascade.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I listen to these programs morning after morning, particularly as we speak to the issue of crime. And I can't help but now join the growing list of people who believe that if we leave it to the parliament and we leave it to the police and our judiciary, our crime will continue to get worse and worse and worse. What I believe we need to do is to go to our bigger neighbors, enter into a shipwrighter agreement, which was first proposed by Mr. Pandey when he was in office, way back when. We will understand why Barbados is making progress on its crime, because they have a shipwrighter agreement. We need to get people who will come in and begin to work not only inside the police service, but to certainly begin to scrutinize the judiciary, and certainly lend an ear to the political directorate so that they will begin to understand the real challenges confronted. when the Prime Minister gets up and talk about and joining the lobby against the gun manufacturers in the United States, that is all well and good. But that's not the issue and that's not the solution. It's a much larger and more difficult challenge that confronts Trinidad and Tobago. And it is unfortunate that the Prime Minister doesn't see that. When you ask anybody who knows about what is going on in the police, you ask them, what percentage of the police service do you believe is corrupt? And you would be appalled and amazed by the answers when they give you the percentages. All of it over 50. I rest my case this morning.
Thank you very much.
We have a caller from
San Fernando. Good morning, caller. Yes. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Hi,
good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I go back to yesterday when you all had, when there was that issue with the Belmont Secondary School.
Yes.
And I listened to a parent speak on yesterday that when she went to the school and there was no police there, and a lot of parents kept their children away from the school. You know, one of the issues I have with that issue, with that fence and all of that, is that in most of these secondary schools, there is no seriously functioning parent-teachers association. Those associations, they have whittled down to next to nothing because parents do not look after their children's interests in the schools. And if it is that there was a big functioning PTA, they would have had the issues with that fence, and that would have been fixed. Why it is that the denominational schools, you have functioning denominational school PTAs? I can tell you about the Hindu schools, the Muslim schools, the Catholic schools, the Presbyterian schools. Those schools have functioning PTAs, and the parents take an interest in the welfare of the surroundings in which the children are a major part of the day. That's my first issue. My second issue is with Fitzgerald Hines. I listened to that clip with Fitzgerald Hines. Fitzgerald Hines said that the lawyers were instructed by the police to make an appeal. Well, that is amazing. I thought the legal arm are the ones that decide whether or not they're going to do this. But to say that the police, it doesn't. A lot of things don't add up in that situation. And one last thing, Sean, you said that criminals have friends in all kinds of places, in customs, in wherever.
That's what Fitzgerald Hines said.
I would say to that there are also criminals in those organizations. Thank you.
Yes, basically,
Thank you.
yes. That's a good that's a good further expansion on the minister's statements.
I wanted to respond to this entire this controversy with respect to the pundits'
Just quickly, it spilled over into a tiff between the opposition leader and the Prime Minister, which I purposefully avoided because I did not see the benefits of giving the whole conversation more attention, but callers called in.
No, you're absolutely right. Don't give any attention to that spat between the Prime Minister and the opposition leader.
Because the point of it...
However, I think I need to acknowledge this. I've said it before, and let me repeat myself again. There is this issue of race here in Trinidad and Tobago, of which we need to address, and we do not want to, or we do not like to, for whatever reason. But at the same time, whilst not wanting to address it, we've also become extremely sensitive, where almost anything now is deemed as racism. That being said, I am not going to defend the pundit's comments. If you are comparing, for those who are saying that okay, Israel Khan said it and therefore I'm listening to Israel Khan, I'm not, with the pundit. Listen to Israel Khan's brief comments that he gave to the Trinidad and Tobago Express newspaper. That has a lot more context than what the pundit said, right? That's one point. That has a lot more context. Two, again I ask, was the pundit really speaking on behalf of the entire community of Arangways? Because even if people are bringing up this notion that East Indians have a lot of money, and since Eric Williams' time and all that, yes, you're right, that exists. That stigma probably exists, whether or not you see it as bad or good. But the point is, I do not think that people are just going to break into a home because I'm East Indian. Because if you break into my home, you're not going to get anything. I'm poor, right? Apart from that, it's about opportunity. So if the majority of the perpetrators are Afro-Trinidadians and the majority are Indo-Trinidadians and whatnot, that's information that Israel Khan is bringing to the table based off of his experience as a defense attorney. And furthermore, you have to understand there is context as compared to the pundit. I interviewed the pundit. I was not very pleased with the interview. I cannot defend the pundit. You have to add context. But overall for me, people are saying, let this conversation end. Okay, we could stop this conversation about the pundit's comments by not giving him the attention. That's one. Because maybe what we're doing here is exactly what he wants or what he likes. We could stop if people are uncomfortable and stop giving him the attention.
Or we're adding to the lack of constructiveness.
Furthermore, and I'm glad you said it the way you said it, there is an issue of race here in TNT. We need to address it. As I started, I will conclude. Because we need constructive conversation. We're too sensitive now as a nation, and we're blessed with a certain level of diversity. And quite honestly, why are we fighting each other? We have to try and resolve this issue.
I will be the first one to actually probably agree once the statistics bear it out. I think now is the time to close the phone lines. Once the statistics bear it out, that yes, there probably is a high propensity of crimes coming out from urban youths who are Afro-Trinidadian, just like you see that to some extent happening in North America. However, the pundits, this is why I keep harping on communications, whether it's government, that is to say the majority, whether it is the opposition, whether it is some other political entity, organization, union, or in this case, a religious leader. How you communicate matters. And yes, just because the core basic ways, as my co-host pointed out, are the same, they don't equate, they're not the same. Because I go back to what I originally said. What is the purpose of him saying that in that fashion? Because he gave no constructive follow-up to say, this is what's going on, so we need to do this. Nor did he try to de-emphasize the racial difference and emphasize other demographics, which is to say, urban youths and low income, and these are causing crimes, and et cetera, this environment, this situation, this circumstance, and this is what we need to combat and look out for, because this problem is long-term ongoing. He singled out one race to defend, and he used a term that generally refers to another race, and he kind of vaguely clarified it, which is nice, but...
we have to be fair to Pundit Satyan Maraj as well. Pundit Dr. Brahmanan Ramachan, we haven't spoken about his contribution.
There were other pundits,
there were other pundits as well,
made it, right.
who made some very rational comments as far as I'm concerned, and Satyan Maraj has taken the flak for it well.
The thing is, those comments, you could try to say what his intentions were. And you know what? I'll be the first one to believe that he didn't necessarily have the worst intentions in the world, but they will light a match that will cause a firestorm and will further racial tensions. Case in point, one caller disagreed with it and other callers disagreed with him. But to some extent, if the shoe was on the other foot, will you be quick to defend the comments? I don't know. I am willing to say things with regards to races and racial differences or whatever, race relations, because I'm willing for what I say to be said about me. But I'm very certain, if you all are willing to talk about race, acknowledge stereotypes of your own race, well, okay, let's go down the road. I don't think so, because how it was done in this case was not constructive. It's not going to lead us to anywhere positive.
Listen, as I said,
it's not necessary.
Pandit Maraj said, and I quote, all the crime we have been facing in Arangwas, all the crime we have been facing in Arangwas is being committed by urban youth, the miscreants who occupy the east-west corridor. He said it's urban youth gang member. I am still seeking clarification over that, because it is being interpreted by everybody as him saying Afro-Trinidadians. For me, I wanted exact clarification.
Yes.
And he didn't give exact clarification. No. He just stuck to urban youth gang. Whatever that means.
The issue is, when you say the victims are only East Indian, then not the victims are the people of Arangwes. It's those little Freudian slips that those of us who care about communication cannot help but narrow in on.
So all our callers, and you're free to express your opinion, nothing is wrong with that. But also, guys, listen, I'm just asking you, you have to analyze and you have to also listen. You have to listen, you have to put everything in context, you have to analyze, right? And there are many things that are open to interpretation. So if no clarification is given, just as how I tried to get clarification over what urban youth gang member is, and that wasn't defined, then okay, perhaps you're absolutely correct in saying your interpretation is factual. But at this point, please, read carefully, listen carefully to every single word. Ensure that you understand the context of which the individual is saying it. And furthermore, analyze. That's my advice to you as we conclude Talking Point this morning. Thank you to all our callers. Thank you to our guest, Sean Michael Small. I hope you have a good day. And tomorrow is going to be an interesting morning with interesting stories.
I mean, nobody called. Well, we only had one call, I believe, about what I would say the bombshell story. So I'm hoping to get public feedback about that tomorrow, because that should have been what we were talking about in this segment.
Doesn't matter. I'm glad people are expressing their thoughts and opinions. I just want them to think. I just want you all to honestly think critically and analyze. Again, let me not repeat myself except to say today's a good day to have a good day. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m.